Hey there, I'm Adrienne, your go-to guide on this empowering journey to self-love and authenticity. I've transformed my own struggles into strengths, and now I help others navigate their path to their inner knowing and create personal fulfillment. On this show, we're not shying away from tough conversations. We're diving headfirst into topics like self-worth, overcoming limiting beliefs, challenging societal norms, and creating a life that's not just successful, but truly fulfilling. We're all about blending heartfelt, soul-searching chats with practical, actionable strategies. Think of this podcast as your trusty compass on the path to your most authentic life, mixed with a cozy fireside chat with a dear friend. Ready to uncover your true self and lead a life that's in sync with your deepest desires? You're in the right place, friend. Welcome to the Live Your Truth, Love Your Life podcast. Hey there, book lovers and life enthusiasts. It's time to turn a page in our journey of self-discovery and growth. Introducing the Live Your Truth, Love Your Life book club, a gathering space for those who find wisdom in words and power in pages. Every month, we'll explore books that ignite our passions, challenge our perspectives, and inspire action towards living our best lives. Starting December 1st, we're diving into a world where personal development isn't just read about, it's actively practiced and lived. If you're tired of reading books that inspire you in the moment, only to find that the lessons fade away, this book club is your solution. We won't just be reading, we'll be connecting, sharing, and growing together. With discussions, exclusive insights, and interactive sessions, this is more than just a book club. Say goodbye to the disconnect between knowledge and action. Are you ready to live your truth and love your life like never before? Visit www.adriencrowley.com/book club to learn more and get on the waitlist. Let's make our personal growth journey a collective, supportive, and transformative experience. See you there. Hey there, friends. Welcome back to Live Your Truth, Love Your Life. I'm Adrienne, and I really appreciate you tuning in today. So I've got a super special episode for you today. I have got a dear friend and somebody I went through life coach training with, Gazit Chaya Nkosi. They go by Z. So I'm going to give you a little bio introduction and then bring them in. And I just know this conversation is going to provide so much value. Their story is absolutely incredible. And they have so much experience with a lot of different modalities that I think could be very interesting to hear about their experience with. So for the bio, they go by Z, and Z is grateful to now be enjoying the roller coaster of life after decades of suffering from a victimhood mindset. They are excited to share what they've learned in this Earth School through their podcast, YouTube channel, courses, and coaching programs, with their core mission being to live and love into the absolute innocence of all beings. So, Z, welcome.
Thank you. That gave me such chills. It's so
I'm so
lovely
excited
to
to have you.
hear that. Thank you.
Yes. So to start us off, like I said, we had met in our life coach training. And for those that don't know you, although they're going to know a lot after today, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, your story, and how you got to where you are today, sharing your lessons learned with the world?
Yeah. I'm just, first of all, so grateful to be at this point in my life. It was really difficult to be on this planet for me for the first
Mhm.
35 years of my life. And sort of, universal themes of dealing with feeling like I wasn't belonging to the group
Mhm.
that I thought represented safety. And so in that fear, I really suffered a lot, um,
Mhm.
feeling like being a victim was really my main identity,
Mhm.
and feeling like it would be much easier if people didn't have to deal with me. I just really felt like I was a problem. And that was so painful. And I'm so grateful that through just like miracle after miracle after miracle, I've been supported in, like you said, being really resourced by a ton of different modalities and philosophies and perspectives. And at each stage, I feel like I've just been gifted these amazing possibilities of
Mhm.
how to, as I'll talk about, the slogan with DBT, dialectical behavioral therapy, is to live a life worth living. And it just, every time I hear that, it just makes me want to weep, because that was something that felt so impossible,
Mhm.
for all, majority of my life. And to really feel like the life that I'm living now is really worthwhile, not just for myself, but I'm now shifting into being able to contribute.
Mhm.
And not just, the dramatic, like, complete, universe altering, realities, from feeling like I was the biggest problem, and the best gift I could give to the planet would be to remove myself from it, to actually feel like I do have, something beautiful to offer, is more than I ever, ever, ever dreamed of. So I'm just, yeah, I'm just reveling in it right now.
No, that is absolutely incredible, and I think that transformation, as far as kind of going through everything that you went through and changing your mindset around a lot of it, and now being able to share that with everyone, it's so powerful, because you're not somebody that's talking at people as if you don't understand the struggles. You've been in the struggles, and now, not to say, you never have struggles, but you're on the other side of the ones that you've already been through. And I just think that's really powerful to be able to speak from that truth.
Thank you. That was the biggest
Mhm.
difference for me, is that my DBT teacher had been through it. She wasn't like a trained psychologist. She taught from
Mhm.
her own experience, and it was all peer level. And I like thinking of us all as co-creators with no
Mhm.
hierarchy, and that, like, I'm so glad that you experience me as speaking just from my experience and wanting to just share with people from the mud. And I never want to be in a situation where I'm like, I'm telling you what to do, or
Mhm.
anything like that. I just feel like, if it was possible for me, then I really think it's possible for anyone. And it would make me so happy to know that someone who's thinking there was no hope could
Mhm.
maybe get a glimmer of hope from hearing about the things that I've gone through. So yeah.
Absolutely. Um, so since you brought up DBT,
Yeah.
you wrote a book, and it is available on Amazon Kindle. I read it and it's fantastic. And we don't have to like dive super into the book at the moment, but the book is called Holy Shit, Growing from Life's Challenges. And I bring this up because, by the way, for anyone listening, I became like obsessed with this book and took a ton of notes, and I'm super excited to be able to actually talk to the person that wrote it. So when you talked about dialectical behavior therapy, DBT, there was a quote where you said, I wanted to die every day for at least 20 years, and then suddenly I didn't. Um, are you able to like pinpoint what that shift was, or like what in that experience really helped kind of click from that, from that desire to not wanting to that anymore?
Yeah, yeah, I can tell you exactly what it was. It was that I had been told, um, from the time I was 20 until the time when I started DBT was I was 35. So I had been told for 15 years that I would either end up institutionalized or dying by suicide. That was the only trajectory that the professionals and the significant people in my life, saw for me. That came after my overdose, when I was diagnosed with borderline personality disorder, um, while I was unconscious in the psych hospital.
Mm-hmm.
So I really internalized that. Um, that prophecy, if you wanna call it, that they really thought that was the only, 2 possibilities of my life, and, I felt so horrible about that, and it just influenced every single interaction and every single, plan and that I made, because I expected that I would either die by suicide or end up institutionalized. And so how could I really show up for anything if I was just waiting for one of those two things to happen? And what I learned in dialectical behavioral therapy, which was created by Dr. Marsha Linehan, who had been given the diagnosis of borderline personality disorder herself. So, again, another person who speaks from experience. Um,
Mm-hmm.
she created it for specifically initially people who had been given that BPD diagnosis. And amongst sort of the industrial psychiatric complex, borderline personality disorder is considered pretty untreatable, pretty hopeless. Many psychologists and psychiatrists refuse to work with people with BPD. So it's this population that has huge bias against it. And Marsha came up with this very simple and accessible and skills-based program that is
Okay.
more like a class than talk therapy. There's no talk therapy actually involved with it. It's a set
Okay.
of skills that you learn and you do homework through them. And the idea is that people with this skills deficit, not for
Mm-hmm.
their own fault, but because of the environment that they were raised in, or, their system. Often it's very highly emotional people, highly
Mm-hmm.
sensitive people, um, have a skills deficit, that they can be taught these skills and that they can live a life worth living. And for this group of people, that's like huge, huge, because this group of people has been told, just like me, you'll never make it as a functioning member of
Mm-hmm.
society. So to hear that message and be with a group of people for the first 6 months was the first class I took, and see not only the changes that practicing these skills were making in my own life, but to see the changes that were happening in the people in my group who were also like, I was almost on disability, I was about to get divorced, my parenting rights were being like considered, I was losing everything, and everyone in the group was in that same position. It's often like court ordered, even DBT, because it's for people that are really in an extreme state. Um, and I watched the transformation of the people around me. I saw it in my own life. And I was being told by a professional that I was not a hopeless story, that I could change my life if I just followed these simple strategies. What, I didn't have to think a new perspective. I didn't have to, I didn't
Mm-hmm.
have to like have some sort of spiritual epiphany. I just had to follow very simple, skills based strategies. And
Mm-hmm.
just having that whole, message that you can live a life worth living, and we know exactly who you are and where you're at, and we still think it's possible. So it was someone else believing that it was possible for me and reflecting that to me and giving me a guidebook of how to get there is what made me not feel like I needed to die. Because if I was just going to be institutionalized, I've been in 3 different psych hospitals. That's not a life worth living. I knew I couldn't tolerate that. I also knew I couldn't tolerate making everybody's lives horrible. And so death seemed like the most responsible and kind option given what I understood. But when I understood that maybe I could not be a burden and that I could be, a functioning citizen, then I didn't feel like my only option was death.
That is absolutely incredible. And I can't imagine how difficult it must have been to have those messages coming from other people, because I don't think I'm alone in the fact that I have spent years beating myself up about various things. And, when you kind of think the worst thoughts about yourself or the way that you're showing up and or things you've done or experiences you've had, that's tough. But to have people telling you that like those are your only options, I just, it hurts my heart to hear you talk about that, you know? It's just, I'm sorry that you
Thank
went through that, really.
Well, you know what's really wild is that I'm
What?
not sorry that I went
Okay.
through it,
Mhm.
because those circumstances, they were more liberating for me than anything else I can imagine the universe throwing at me, because
Mhm.
the combination of, you know, this sort of pre-suicidal piece is that I realized that I was queer, and
Mhm.
I was only exposed to a philosophy in which that, being, queer or trans meant that you were gonna be eternally damned in some sort of hell type situation, right? And so, I was faced with something where who I was, something I couldn't change about, any more than I could change the color of my eyes, was damning me, forced my system, on like a physical and soul, mental level, to have to um, deal with, if I can't be me, like if I am the problem, then what else is there, right? So being forced to reconcile with that allowed me to break out of the good bad paradigm, or the right wrong, or the acceptable not acceptable. So if you're
Mhm.
actually unable to be approved of in a system, then you no longer have to seek approval, right?
That
If
is
it's
good. Right.
impossible, then the only option is to say, well, I don't need approval then. I must not, because here I am and I'm unable to receive approval.
Mhm.
So that must mean that approval is not what makes us survive,
It's
right?
so
Because
true.
here I
Mhm.
was existing without approval. So it was an incredible blessing, actually, because I, if I had not been queer, I could have had a reasonable um, way or plan to try to continue to follow the rules and please the people.
Mhm.
And because I couldn't do that, it allowed me to let go of the rules and to let go of pleasing the people.
That's really powerful. It really is.
Yeah.
And
And I wanna make a quick footnote.
Mhm.
DBT was created for borderline personality disorder, but it's now being used for, like, every person on the spectrum, like, very effectively, and there's been lots of, evidence-based, studies around its use with, like, every population from, everything in the DSM to just,
Mhm.
people struggling with life, so, um I recommend DBT to the world.
Yes, I was actually gonna ask you that next. Like, if you don't have that diagnosis, DBT, you could still
Yes.
benefit from.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, one of my
Or
dreams in life is to, like, start a program where, pregnant people get, free DBT, because we know we'll touch on nervous system maybe at some point, but we know that the nervous system of the pregnant person affects the nervous system development of the growing child, and if you could have DBT during pregnancy and in the first couple of years of parenting, it would revolutionize, like, the whole world. I dream of DBT in, like, every kindergarten classroom. I just DBT is magical and, um, accessible to all types of people of all different cognitive abilities. It's super practical, and it'll make your life better no matter who you are, and I actually I don't agree with any, mental health diagnosis, like, from the perspective that they usually come from. I think all of our behavior just like matches our circumstances until we're given tools and resources. Um, so yeah, it's super awesome for everyone on the planet, and I love it so
it
much.
curious about wanting to learn the skills of DBT. Would you recommend finding a class in your area, online, starting with books, or is
Yeah.
there, like a really good entry point?
Yes. So I'm just leaning down because I'm going to grab my trusty. This is like my Bible. This is my dialectical behavioral therapy skills workbook. I
Okay.
keep it close to my heart at all times.
Hmm.
So you can get a workbook. There's lots available online, and go through it yourself. Taking a class is awesome too. Most insurances do cover DBT because it's
Okay.
very evidence based and has been proven so effective with so many populations. You can get a DBT individual therapist who will integrate, checking in on you, how you're using the skills with talk
Hmm.
therapy. My favorite is the class that I took on repeat for 7 years. It's only a 9-month program, but I took it like maybe 10 times through because I just did it on repeat for 7 years. It's
I love
called
that though.
Thank you. Some people can get it once through. I needed it. And it was like very painful for me to stop taking it. But like both my teacher and I agreed that like I had memorized all of the classes and and I was probably had enough information to teach it myself. And I just was not ready to let go of my identity as like a good DBT student. But I have graduated many times over, and her program is called DBT Path, PATH, and her website is emotionallysensitive.com. And Debbie is one of my like top 3 humans on the planet. She's extraordinary. Like I said, she's been to hell and back on her own journey, and she
Hmm.
speaks with like such compassion and understanding. I've never met a person who made me feel more lovable and like
Hmm.
valuable. She's just extraordinary. And her program is really special because a lot of the programs that are taught kind of by psychologists or psychiatrists can sometimes feel a little demeaning.
Hmm.
I mean, obviously there's exceptions to that, but it's a little like, I'm going to teach you how to be a better person kind of a vibe. And
Hmm.
Debbie's not like that at all. And her program has like a community aspect to it. And like, it's not just the skills class. It's like also she has a beautiful like movement class, and then there's like DBT and T where you just like chat and ask questions. There's like
Okay.
all these it becomes like a whole very full like life, because a lot of times people who really are at the place where they need something so significant, they'll not be working, not have a lot of
Hmm.
community or friends, and it builds in like this very full, amazing life. I love it so much. It's my favorite thing. Yep. So,
So you said you keep the workbook near.
mhm.
How have you integrated the skills or lessons in your day to day? Or
Yes,
do you still intentionally
yes,
practice things from it, or what does that look like?
yes. I use DBT every day.
Okay.
It is a lifestyle for me, and there's 4 modules of DBT. It's distress tolerance, interpersonal effectiveness, emotion regulation, and mindfulness. And I use all of them every day. So distress tolerance skills are a variety. There's everything DBT has acronyms, which I really love.
Mhm.
So there's the tip and the improve are 2 of the distress tolerance skills that I reach for, I would say, every day. They are tip stands for temperature, intense exercise, paced breathing, and progressive muscle relaxation. And that's when you're in like a real hard moment and you want to not, you don't have the ability to make the situation better, but you just want to not make it worse. So it's
Okay.
like that moment when you maybe have like a big thing and you maybe want to lash out at somebody, or you want to do something harmful to yourself, or you want to, send an angry text, something like that. This can help you to sort of like ride the wave of that intense emotion without acting out on it.
Okay.
And so I use temperature a lot. So I have ice packs, and like I almost always have a cup with ice in it you can access like a automatic reflex that lowers your heart rate and your breathing rate through cold temperature on like your wrists or your face. So I do that one a lot. And the other one, improve, stands for imagery. I'm not going to be able to rattle it off. Let me just pull it up. It's very much like your recent podcast about spiritual practices. It includes, it's called Improve the Moment. Imagery, so that's like, imagining nice things or smells or a guided meditation. Meaning, asking yourself, like, what meaning can I find from this situation? Prayer, seeking guidance through prayer, not in a religious way, but just seeking guidance from higher meaning or higher source, however you frame that. Relaxation, any kind of deep breathing or stretching or the progressive muscle relaxation. One thing in the moment, that's just like doing a task that you really do mindfully. So you like notice what sensations you're having, what smells, what it feels like, washing the dishes or something mindfully. Vacation, like taking a break, not a full vacation, but like, okay, I'm going to take a 5-minute walk and just sort of clear my head. And then encouragement, like using phrases that you've chosen very specifically for yourself, like this too shall pass, or I understand that I'm doing my best at all times, or I accept that we all have challenges, something like that, that just is like encouraging to you. So I use all of those every day.
Okay. It's really powerful practices. I didn't mean to lead us down this like you necessarily
super DBT.
instructing.
You know what's
But
hilarious
it's so
is
important. Like,
as I was getting ready, I was like, what I do on every single thing, even when I intend to talk about something else, is I just end up talking about DBT. And I'll be interested to see how that ends up playing out in my life, because I'm not a DBT teacher, but that is, if anyone asked me, what's the number one thing you could do to make your life better, I would be like DBT.
And that's it. The way that you wrote about it in your book and that transformation, I was like, there is no way that that I can't ask about this, because it is such a powerful and profound shift that it helped you realize.
Yeah. And there was no way, like I said, nobody believed my current life was possible. Nobody. Everybody thought for sure that I had no hope and that I was just going to be a burden either on the people in my life or society. Yeah. And turns out I don't have to be. I'm just like, what? It's amazing. It's amazing. The other DBT skill that I use every day, which I think is really valuable for people, is the please skill. And that is treat physical illness. Let me just make sure I get it all right. So it's treat physical illness. That's the PL. Balance your eating. Avoid mind-altering substances. Get enough sleep, and get regular exercise. And that is the foundation of everything in my life. So I am extremely protective of my sleep, of my daily walk, of my being able to eat things that feel good to me, not using mind-altering substances, because that's the right choice for me, not because I have any opinion for anybody else. And really being super responsive to physical illness. So if I'm not feeling well, I don't push through. Those things really sound simple, but I would say the majority of people in the US are not doing those things. And it's very hard to have any sort of spiritual perspective or enjoyment if you're just so bogged down because you're exhausted and hungry and not getting regular movement. We're animals, and most of us don't treat ourselves with the respect that we give our pets.
Mhm.
to make sure that they have balanced eating and sleep and exercise. So,
And I think that is a really good point. Like when things get hard, oftentimes the first thing that we do is let go of the practices that we have to take care of ourselves.
yeah,
And of course, that sends you down the slippery slope of things feeling worse
yep,
and, that inability to cope almost. But it's if
exactly.
you return to those basic practices where you're caring for yourself, everything else almost seems more manageable.
Yes, 100%.
Yes. So you had just said something that I also highlighted in your book,
Okay.
and something I wanted to bring up because I don't know what it is, but like this past week, especially, this is something that I've really been thinking about. And you had said, I believe that everyone is doing their best, and that if I believed what they believed, I would act exactly like them.
Mm.
And first, that is an absolutely beautiful perspective. It really, truly is.
It's Byron Katie. I can't take credit for it.
Yeah. I knew she had talked about something very similar. And Brene Brown, actually, I think the first time I had heard it, and I can't remember if it was in her book or if it was listening to her podcast when she was
Mhm.
telling the story. But either way, she was at a conference she was giving a speech, and she was assigned to a hotel room, like with a random roommate that was also giving a speech at the conference.
Mhm.
And this person was not um, adhering to what she felt like was like a basic decency in a roommate
Yeah.
situation with a stranger kind
Yeah.
of thing. And, just leaving their stuff everywhere, being really loud and staying up late. And, Brene said she was just getting so frustrated with this. And she was talking to her assistant and kind of venting about this person.
Yeah.
And her assistant said to her, what if that person is doing the best that they can? And Brene said the way that she took that in and has contemplated it since in trying to afford people like that benefit of the doubt kind of thing. And
Yeah.
since I heard that, that is something I too have tried to
Yeah.
remind myself, like when,
Yeah.
conflict is getting heated, somebody's doing something that I'm
Right.
judging or really
Right.
frustrated by, just that like maybe they are doing the best that they can.
100%.
But then I had that I don't know, I think it was, and this is a ridiculous, absurd, example or story, but I'm at the grocery store parking lot, load up the vehicle, return the cart, and there are just carts like strewn about. One of them, like somebody left behind somebody else's vehicle, and I just had this thing. I'm like, are these people really doing the best that they can? And then,
Yeah.
and it's petty, but it kind of got me thinking
Yeah.
that again, and like kind of almost meditating on that thought. And
Yeah.
what really, I guess, got me in what you had said was if I believed what they believed,
Yeah.
I would act exactly like them. And that kind of clicked into place because you don't know anybody's circumstances.
Yeah.
And maybe the cart's all over the grocery store. Maybe they think like if I provide the person that returns the cart with a job to do, then that is job security for
Yeah.
them. I don't know what they
Yeah.
believe, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know, there's just that line, and when I read it in your book, I'm like, this is what's been like plaguing my brain.
I was so delighted. Well, again, I cannot take credit for it. It's totally Byron Katie. If you're thinking and believing what they're thinking and believing, you will do the exact same thing 100% of the time. And that's why I adore the combination of the work of Byron Katie with the nervous system work around polyvagal theory, because polyvagal theory really shows us that on a very physiological level,
Mhm.
your perception is altered by your nervous system state. Okay. So if I'm in a sympathetic nervous system state where I am experiencing a threat, for
Mhm.
whatever reason, it could be based on the current situation or it could be based on epigenetic information from at least 7 generations back that I'm not consciously aware of. So, this is stuff that's happening in the autonomic nervous system without our conscious recognition most of the time.
Mhm.
We are going to perceive a person smiling at us as someone baring their teeth ready to attack. Okay, we're going to hear a different tone of voice than the person standing in front of us is actually using when we're in a sympathetic state. So that state is automatic. We
Mhm.
cannot, we cannot if that system initiates where we are getting the nervous system response, the nervous system is saying we have detected a threat, there's nothing that we can do to stop that automatic process. And then where the nervous system regulation and the work of Byron Katie comes in is that you get the chance to say, ooh, hey, nervous system, thank you for ringing that alarm bell and letting me know that you have detected a threat in my environment. Let me
Mm-hmm.
support you. What can I give you right now? That's where those spiritual practices come in, the nervous system regulation around breathing, vocalization, movement, or mindfulness, right? We do something to support our nervous system and coming back to ventral, which is like a calm, connected state. Then we can access something like the work of Byron Katie, which is self inquiry, or flexible thinking, as it's described in radically open DBT, which is a little bit of an offshoot of DBT. We can access this self inquiry to say, okay, what is my thinking connected to this nervous system experience? And does that thinking um, align with my values? Is it absolutely true? Is there any discrepancy in that thinking? Can I look at it from 3 or 4 other perspectives to support myself? And with that, we give ourselves exactly what you did in saying, okay, maybe this person was trying to help someone have a job. Maybe this person had a sudden bout of IBS and they needed to dash home so they wouldn't go diarrhea in their car and they couldn't put the cart away. Maybe this
Mm-hmm.
person had 3 or 4 kids and they were all screaming and they just sent the cart into the thing so they could get everybody in the car and get home because they haven't slept in 3 years and
Mm-hmm.
they just don't even have the capacity to notice where the cart ends up, right? Maybe
Yep.
this person is really plagued by some sort of depression or anxiety
Mm-hmm.
and is really overwhelmed by the busyness of the parking lot and
Yep.
can't really, they've just dealt with the stimulation of a big box store and they're close to having a panic attack and they need to just leave the cart and get in the car and
Yep.
take some deep breaths. There's so many
Mm-hmm.
possibilities there. And as we offer ourselves those possibilities, what opens up is this reality check of, wow, anytime I've done something that didn't align with my values, it was because I didn't have the capacity to.
Yep.
And when I forgive myself and realize that for myself, then I start to notice that the whole entire planet is dealing with the same realities of this
Mm-hmm.
physiology of a nervous system that is overtaxed by our society, that is built for machines and not animals, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that there's actually nobody who's doing anything wrong.
Yep. It's incredible. It really is. And even that, I think in taking the different perspectives and allowing myself to consider them, but also just the thought of like, if I'm being judgmental and assuming the worst in somebody, am I showing up as my best? And that answer for me is no. And so once I kind of make that connection of like, that's not who I want to be in the world, the person that's looking and assuming the worst, it helps shift a little bit.
Yeah.
But
And on that
I
point, your energy that you're sending out
mhm,
when you're in judgment, even if you smiled at all the people as you did it,
yeah.
energetically, you're putting that into that community of people. And I would
Mhm.
venture to say that that judgmental energy is going to have more negative consequences than the cart that
Yes.
needs to be tucked into the cart container thing. So
Mhm.
yeah, that is a beautiful perspective, Adrian, of thinking about what you're contributing when you're in
Mhm.
a place of judgment. Yeah, that's really powerful.
Yeah. Yeah, and like I said, when I was reading your book and that line came up, I was just like, "This is it." Like, as ridiculous as it is, this is just something like that particular
Yeah,
example is just something
it
I've been
just
like mulling over, but
coaches.
it helped
Yeah,
me reach all of these conclusions. And like so the way that you wrote it,
I'm so grateful.
it really clicked a lot of things into place for me.
Thank you, Byron Katie.
Right. So you got to learn directly from Byron Katie because we learned the work in our coach training, but could you talk a little bit about that? What that was like learning directly from her?
Yeah, so I have studied Byron Katie,
Mm-hmm.
and I have not actually done her official School for the Work. It is a dream and goal of mine.
Mm-hmm.
But I did have the opportunity to do the work with Byron Katie herself.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
so everybody is welcome to join on Mondays, Wednesdays. Let me double check this.
Oh, is it the Byron Katie from home?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep. So it's on Mondays, Wednesdays, I think at Mondays, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, maybe, at 9 a.m. Pacific. She does a Zoom call.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see if I can find it real quick. I'm not sure where it is. At Home with Byron Katie, it's called.
Yep.
Um, and I'm not seeing exactly where, but we can maybe put that in your notes or something.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
so it's like 3 mornings a week,
Mm-hmm.
at 9 a.m. You can sign up. It's I think you can pay nothing. It's like a sliding scale, but you can make a donation
Mm-hmm.
and you go, and it's a Zoom room, and Katie is there. She goes by Katie.
Okay.
And um, you fill out a Judge Your Neighbor worksheet, which is not the way that we were trained to use the work in the Martha Beck Wayfinder training.
Okay.
But it's the way that Katie designed it, is to use the Judge Your Neighbor worksheet. She also has a One Belief at a Time worksheet, but for this setting, she usually does Judge Your Neighbor. So someone fills their worksheet out in advance and
Mm-hmm.
comes and raises their hand, and she chooses someone, and then she goes through it with them.
Oh,
And
wow.
I got chosen, and I was like freaking out. And Adrian, I will send it to you because it is like so sad. I just like weep the entire time. It was so profound. Like every time I watch
Mm-hmm.
it, I learn something new. She was so like she held my feet to the fire. She was like, "You are so trapped in your ego. You are so off track. Like you do." Because at that point, I had been studying it obsessively for like several years. I had listened
Mm-hmm.
to her do the work at least 1,000 times with other people. And I thought that I was like really I knew what I was doing, you know? And
Mm-hmm.
then I thought it was so spiritual. And then she was like, "You're so trapped in your ego." And I was like, "Kidding? Like what?" It was so good. She was so like assertive with me. She did not
Mm-hmm.
try to like,
Some
you
tough
know,
love.
oh, oh my gosh. But it was the best thing that ever happened again, because
Mm-hmm.
her just totally like ripping away my little like, I know what I'm doing, was allowed me to go to such a deeper level with it. And I could not be more grateful. And it profoundly changed my life. Her, she's really like what they would call like Christ consciousness level.
Mm-hmm.
She really is not living from good bad. She actually lives into absolute innocence, and
Mm-hmm.
you experience that frequency when you're in direct connection with her. I also experience it, when I'm just reading her books or listening to her, but in that actually she was addressing me, it was so profound and intense and healing and liberating. And yeah, it was one of the wildest experiences of my life, but it's allowed me to really like get even more out of this incredibly simple, again,
Mm-hmm.
like DBT, but life altering set of questions that anyone can access, children to adults.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I love her and I love the work.
Yeah, watching you facilitate the work in class. So, for anyone listening, when we go through coach training, we do coaching pairs in class, and we're observed by the class and the instructor, and you get feedback at the end. And Z is masterful with walking somebody through the work. It's absolutely amazing. So, if you do get to coach with Z, you want them as your coach first off. But if you get to do the work with them, it's amazing. Even watching it, if you're not the one that is doing the work, it is, yeah, it's profound, and you are absolutely masterful leading somebody through that. It's incredible to watch. Like, the first time that I saw you doing that, I was mind blown. It was amazing. It really was, because I felt like I was like, I get the concepts. I've read a couple of her books. I've heard her do the work, but there was just something about it, like during the training, where it just didn't feel like it was clicking. Something, I don't know. And even still, when I practice it, it almost feels a little bit clunky sometimes. Like sometimes it goes swimmingly, and then at other times I'm just like, you're doing this wrong. Or something, like something is just not clicking. But when you went through it, it was absolutely masterful. And
Well, I will say that thank you for that.
yes.
Um, the work is tricky because Katie is living on I don't know if you've ever come across spiral dynamics, but it's
No.
fascinating. It's not a tangent we'll go down because I don't know enough about it, but there's like frequency levels sort of. She's living
Hmm.
in what I think is like the turquoise, and it is sort of this Christ consciousness, right? So she's seeing things from such a pulled back perspective that for many people who are not on that frequency, it can appear that she's saying what happened didn't happen, or that she's blaming the victim,
Hmm.
which can be really uncomfortable for people when they first are encountering the work.
Hmm.
Um, and I struggled with that too for years. I wouldn't look at it because I was like, no, yes, it's true. These people did
Yeah.
awful things to me, And I was
Hmm.
so offended that she would ask, because for those who don't know, the first two questions are, is it true? And is it absolutely true? And I thought she was looking for someone to say no. Um, the reality is a yes or a no are just as they're equal. There's nothing to be gained from a yes versus a no in the work, but from where she's coming from, it's not that the experience did not create some pain or suffering.
Hmm.
It's the piece that we were just talking about, that
Yep.
it's everybody is just doing the only thing they could be doing given what they're
Hmm.
thinking and believing. And while an acute situation can be painful, like let's say someone takes a 2x4 and hits me over the head, okay, in that exact moment, it's going to be very painful, right?
Hmm.
Then it will likely heal, or maybe there'll be some chronic pain perhaps. But that pain, the acute pain, is not going to create suffering in my life. It's incapable of creating suffering in my life. What creates suffering is the story that I'm telling
Hmm.
myself about the acute pain. So, for example, while someone being sexually abused or war or, child hunger, none of these things are things that we want to happen. When we are approaching these things with the it's so awful, it should never happen, how dare they, we need to fight, we need to put the bad people in prison, that keeps us in judgment, which
Hmm.
in terms of brain functioning is in your lower brain, where you evolutionarily only have the resources of a reptile or like a lizard, right? You don't have any problem solving, solution creation. You don't have any means for collaboration, language, um, depth of understanding, any type of connection with other beings. That's impossible in this part of your brain. And the pathway from that part of your brain up to your executive functioning frontal lobe is governed by the amygdala, which acts as a doorway. Because if you're in an active threat situation, you don't want to be able to come up and say to a tiger who's about to eat you, but hey, how are you feeling? And do you really, is it true that you're hungry?
Hmm.
And could we maybe fill into, like, if we could create some sort of compromise and connection around this tiger, right? That would be actually life threatening. So the amygdala
Hmm.
keeps you down here so that you just run or fight or hide, right?
Hmm.
So the amygdala is doing a good thing by keeping you in judgment when it's actually trying to save your life. When you've been telling the same story about my parents should accept me because I'm queer for 35 years, right?
Hmm.
You actually have never found a solution. you've never found a way to connect or understand or compromise or move forward or be inspired or creative. You've kept yourself acting like a lizard because of
Mm-hmm.
the story. And so what she gives people the opportunity to do is to move past the acute situation so that they can come back to their executive function and think of creative and inspired solutions for things like sexual abuse and child hunger and war, right? So it's not that she's saying those things aren't real. She's saying you can't help them. You can't do anything about it. We can't make a better world when we're coming from judgment, because judgment doesn't actually physically have the tools to find creative solutions.
Yes, absolutely.
Sorry, that was a little
So
bit of a soap.
no, no, no. I love it. And like so your understanding of the work and that process and what it does for you mentally, physically, all of it is just it's incredible. And I love hearing you talk about it. I love you explaining it. And I think anyone listening has 1,000% benefited from hearing that explanation. Um, Not really transitioning gears because I know it's something that Byron Katie believes, but you say your core mission is to live in love into the absolute innocence of all beings. Can you talk about that a little bit and like what it means to you and how you arrived at that?
Yeah, again, thank goodness for the plan that my soul chose in this
Mm-hmm.
lifetime, if that's what happens. All of the circumstances that I've lived through perfectly combined to offer me this question. Am I guilty? Am I the problem? Am I wrong?
Mm-hmm.
Right? All signs pointed to that. And then I was stuck.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm here on the planet and I'm already wrong and damned, then what does the rest of life look like? Right? So it was sort of the perfect setup to be able to open to and uh, I don't know, dissolve into this idea of absolute innocence.
Mm-hmm.
Because if we can only be here, or if we can only have value, or if life only has meaning, if we are doing the things right, then we're doomed.
Mm-hmm.
Because nobody's doing 100% of the things right, right? And that's why
Mm-hmm.
the self criticism that, the inner critic that you talk about
Mm-hmm.
is so pervasive and so oppressive,
Mm-hmm.
because there is always, in a world of right and wrong, good and bad, there is always the opportunity to be wrong or to be bad.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can't save yourself from it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, this absolute innocence is acknowledging that, one, we don't have all of the perspectives. We don't understand everything. So there's
Mm-hmm.
something going on here. And I'm not sure if it's a dream. I'm not sure if it's a virtual reality game. I'm not sure if
Mm-hmm.
I'm watching from a soul level. I'm not sure if it's just chaos and I'm going to turn to dust. I'm not sure what's happening here. But
Mm-hmm.
on some level, I understand that I'm having experiences and that there's a culture who is trying to get me to believe that some of those experiences are okay and some of them are not. And when I align myself with that thinking, I suffer. It's so
Yep.
painful and it's so confusing and it's so defeating. And because I had such a situation where I couldn't figure out how to make it through that pain and that suffering, I was able to give up,
Mm-hmm.
right? And surrender. And out of that surrender came well, if I don't have to do it right, and if then maybe there's no right or wrong, and
Mm-hmm.
maybe we're just all here having these experiences and we're all going to learn something or not, but maybe if I just accept that it's not a it's not a winning or losing, and it's not a become the most spiritual, and it's not a become the most rich, and it's not a get the most friends, then there's so much permission and grace and so much less suffering, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because while I enjoy this spiritual version, do this learning and incorporate this thinking, I don't think everyone needs to, right? There's going to
Mm-hmm.
be people who don't choose this path, and maybe they're just, for example, some leader who is managing wars. I
Mm-hmm.
believe that that person is also just having these experiences, and perhaps their soul wanted to
Mm-hmm.
try on the role of being a violent dictator. And I don't understand what's going on here. So who am I to say that my spiritual path is better or worse or different
Mm-hmm.
than the violent dictator? I don't know if that's actually a problem, right? And this is where it can get
Yep.
kind of dicey, because
Mm-hmm.
there's going to be people who feel like that's a really inappropriate statement. And I understand that. But I also, for me, this is sort of just a perspective I've chosen.
Mm-hmm.
And if there's other people that want to live into it with me, then I welcome them, but not in any sort of I know a better way kind
Right.
of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't really, again, I have no idea what we're doing here.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, but I know that there was one track that I tried, and for my experience, it made me want to die. And it was just extraordinarily painful. And this track feels great for
Mm-hmm.
me.
Yeah.
It's like finding shoes that fit really good, you know?
Mm-hmm.
It's like my shoes probably won't fit you and feel really good for you. So I love the take what you like and leave the rest idea,
Yes.
because if there's anything that I offer that someone likes, I welcome them to receive it. If there's nothing, I welcome them to totally disregard it. If there's
Mm-hmm.
something in between there, lovely. But for me, this has been just so much joy and so much less suffering. And if there's someone like me who has no hope, who maybe could benefit, I'd love to offer it to them, but not in I
Mm-hmm.
know what's right kind of way, because I don't.
Right. No, I think that's beautiful. And I think the way that you offer things, it's, what is kind of right and true for you. You know what kind of leads you out of suffering. And like you said, it's an offering where if it resonates with somebody else, take what you want, leave what you don't. But it's a freeing perspective, I think. Even if you kind of get into some of that dicey territory where you're like, I don't know how this applies, like you don't have to know everything. But if you kind of lean into that idea and it brings you peace, then I think it's worth exploring.
Knowing that maybe I'll wake up tomorrow and I'll be like, oh, never mind. Now
Yeah.
I think something totally different, you know?
And that's fantastic, right?
Yeah, yeah, it's so freeing. Just that's where the
Mhm.
absolute innocence comes in, because most people are scared that they're not okay, right?
Mhm.
And so I want everyone to know that, at least from where I'm sitting, I think
Mhm.
everyone's okay. I think we're all just confused. That's another Byron Katie quote that I love, that
Mhm.
any form of violence is just a form of confusion, right? Because
Mhm.
if I understood that you, Adrian, are me, and
Mhm.
that we are both absolutely innocent, I would have no ability to harm you.
Mhm.
So I could only harm you if I was confused about your true identity and my true identity.
Mhm.
And that just feels like, it just feels like so compassionate, you know?
It does. Absolutely. Hmm. There's I'm like taking that in, and at the same time I
Yeah.
have like
Yeah. We could just take some breaths if you want. It's a
sure.
pretty amazing.
Yeah, I invite everybody to do that. Let's all take 3 deep breaths together. That was like grounding and felt really nice.
Our little animals love it.
Right?
Mm.
There was, before we get into like present day, your offerings, your coaching, your podcast that's coming out that I'm super excited about. I mean, again, I have a giant list of things, but I can't believe we're already at an hour. So there's one thing I wanted to touch on, which kind of
Yeah.
ties into the spirituality and the belief system. So something I kind of struggled with my whole life. I was raised in a Catholic family, and from when I was very, very young, just none of those beliefs clicked with me. And I would go to church because I was obligated to. And I just remember the thought, and I don't say this like in a disrespectful way for anybody that believes this, but a man in the sky that is judging me for the things that I'm doing or not doing in my life just felt utterly ridiculous to me from a very young age. And um, again, I don't say that in like a judgmental way. I invite anybody to believe whatever it is that they believe and find peace in, and that is amazing. But I just knew in my family, in that set of beliefs, that did not quite click for me. And so I always kind of felt like I was trying to find something that I could believe in. And even as I went into college, taking world religion classes, trying to learn about all of these structured beliefs that exist, trying to fit like, where do I belong and what do I think? Because for so long I was like, well, there's just nothing.
Yeah.
And maybe there is nothing, right? I don't know. And my perspective now is very much that I don't know. I don't need to know. But I've been trying to kind of lean into what feels right for me, and the ideas of like higher self, of universe, of source. That stuff kind of clicks a bit more on the spiritual side than the organized religion side. But when I was reading your book, you had talked about um, getting involved with Al-Anon, and that most of your relationships in some way or another had been touched by addiction. And so even though you were not experiencing addiction when you started this journey, addiction very much had touched your life. And you had talked about a story, or kind of recounted a story in your book about working with a sponsor, and they invited you to consider God and how you understand God. And your sponsor had said that it was your job to create a higher power and the way that would be most comforting and supportive to you. And you had said, it felt like sacrilege and completely backwards. And then you talked about kind of how you went through this process of thinking, like, what do you need a higher power to be for you? And you created that. And that just felt so beautiful and empowering, because it's one of those things, if there is a higher power, and though again it may feel sacrilege and backwoods, I would think the higher power wants you to adapt that to be what you need it to be, right? Isn't that almost like the point of believing in that, is finding the thing that brings you solace, brings you peace, that feels correct for you? And so that story just like really hit, and I was just wondering if you could kind of tell the story and what your higher power, what you designed your higher power to be, because it's really, really beautiful.
Ah, thank you. Yeah, that was so revolutionary for me. It was just like really shocking when that
Mm-hmm.
happened. The way that so Al Anon is a 12-step group that was created to
Mm-hmm.
support people whose lives have been affected by alcoholism.
Mm-hmm.
And so anyone is welcome at any 12-step group. There's open and closed meetings, but the 12-step groups sort of all resonate on basic concepts based on these 12 steps. And they all have they're slightly their own version of it. It was a period of my life. I'm not super involved with Al-Anon anymore, but I still
Mm-hmm.
use principles that I learned from there. Al-Anon's where I learned take what you like and leave the rest, which
Mm-hmm.
I think is really beautiful that they embed into their program that this is not a religion, it's not a dogma.
Mm-hmm.
You can take what is supportive for you and you don't have to do all of it. I was super involved for 5 years. Like you said, I had a sponsor who was really awesome and had been in the program for 30 years and was very clear with me, which is often something that makes it difficult for people to get involved with 12 steps, is that there is this concept of a higher power. That's sort of like a
Mm-hmm.
required component. The rest of the program kind of comes off of the idea of having a higher power, and it can be your higher self, but many groups use the word God.
Mm-hmm.
And so folks often feel like, I don't want to do a God thing, just like you experienced and reflected upon.
Mm-hmm.
And so the way they phrase it is the God of your understanding, which I was like, what the hell does that mean? Like the God
Right.
of my understanding? I'm not understand, like, what? It was just totally shocking and felt really
Mm-hmm.
wrong at first. But she really was like, I don't think you're going to be able to do the steps if you are just hanging on to a punishing God.
Mm-hmm.
Because it doesn't work with that framework. Like, you're trying to have a trusting relationship, and if your God is very punishing and scary, then it's going to be very difficult to build trust.
Mm-hmm.
So she really kind of pushed me on it, because I was like, I don't think I can do that, like, can we skip this one, She was like, you really need to just take some time and give yourself permission. Again, this idea of
Mm-hmm.
permission for those of us, especially who sort of our early programming was around right and wrong. It can
Mm-hmm.
be really tough to allow yourself to have permission to explore outside of those boundaries. So yeah, I did it with like a very half-hearted, I was like, I don't, this is weird. But as I fell into it, I received like this very clear image. And I'm so glad that we're talking about all of this, because I haven't, it's been a while since I wrote the book, and I don't connect with that, that version of higher power very much. And so I'm glad to think about her and like invite her back into my space. So
Mm-hmm.
she's like this older grandma who has like she's real like fierce, but she's
Mm-hmm.
really comforting too. So she's kind of like, I think at that time I was feeling incredibly vulnerable,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't feel fierce myself at all. And so she was like a no bullshit, like, don't, like, I'm not scared of you kind of like fierceness.
Mm-hmm.
And she was maybe like an indigenous person, or she sort of had this like more traditional like indigenous wisdom kind of a vibe, and would kind of like
Okay.
put me in her like little like back carrier like I was a baby. And I could just be like, okay, I am like so snuggled and warm and held, and there's
Mm-hmm.
someone here who like has my back, and is going to look out for me and take care of me. And yeah, I just love that image. Like,
Mm-hmm.
she's not weak, but she's also just like really gentle. And yeah, it was a great starting point for me to begin to explore like having some support that I wasn't scared of. I had never had a even a relationship with a human where I was not scared of them while receiving support. So I had associated um, like control and power dynamics with intimacy.
Okay.
And I think that, that came from the early programming where,
Mm-hmm.
God is both going to be your father and punish you, So it was like my programming led me to believe that those two always were intertwined. And this practice sort of opened me up to the idea of maybe I could have intimacy without authority and like a control of power dynamic. And now I have like a team of people, not people,
Mm-hmm.
beings, I guess.
Yes.
Ancestors, guides. I have an extraterrestrial friend. Like, I have all
Mm-hmm.
sorts of spiritual support and I have all of my parts. Now I was working with a internal family systems therapist for several
Yes.
years. And so I have like, I feel like I walk around with like 100 people with me all the time. I have like 50
Mm-hmm.
of my own parts who are all just like a hoot and talking nonstop. And I have to be like, take turns. Like, it's nobody's turn right now. They're just like hilarious. And I love them all so much. And then I have this like entire team of cool ancestors and guides and my AT and everybody. And I
Mm-hmm.
just feel like it's a riot. Like it's like, I don't know if you did sports, but like when you go on like a
Mm-hmm.
team like tournament and you like all walk into places with like matching uniforms and you just feel like boom, like it just like there's like a bass like music as you like walk through the room. That's what I feel like in life now. I'm just like, we are here. I love it so
Oh,
much.
that is amazing. And I wanted to bring that up because, if somebody's listening and they feel like none of these beliefs that exist feel right for them, that's fine. They
Yeah.
don't have to. You can lean into that idea of creating that spiritual support system, that higher power,
Yeah.
whatever it is that resonates with you. And it just, yeah, it's just such a beautiful idea. And I think, at least for myself, for a really long time, like I said, now as I've gotten a bit older and I'm, really exploring different spiritual practices and being very open to kind of like, let's try this on and see how it feels. And if it does, if that's
Yeah.
not right, we could just put it aside and we could try something else. And
Yeah.
that doesn't feel like a shameful thing at this point. But I do
Yeah.
think that there are people that may feel like, they just don't belong or they don't fit, or maybe there's
Yeah.
something wrong with them because they don't believe this thing.
Yeah.
And I just feel like your story and that experience is just so inviting to explore what it is that you need and put your
Yeah.
faith in that. Like, you can create what you want to
That's
believe. You
right.
don't have, it doesn't have to fall under somebody else's,
Yeah.
established system.
And there is a lot of cultural pushback to that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because like you said, people
Yes.
like you to be all or nothing. It's like, are you
Mm-hmm.
going to be Buddhist? You have to be extremely Buddhist.
Yeah.
Are you going to be, whatever? You have to be this like, even Al-Anon. That's sort of why I took a step back, because it was becoming like, you're not all in on Al-Anon. And I was like, I think,
Mm-hmm.
maybe I'm just a create your own adventure kind of person. I'm like not a
Yes.
recipe follower. Like I like throw whatever I have in and like make stuff up. That's just
Mm-hmm.
my vibe. And that's how I interact with the wisdom traditions. Like I did
Mm-hmm.
convert to Judaism, which is like a whole nother fascinating chapter of my life. But like I also like I don't do Judaism the way that like you're supposed to. I don't do
Mm-hmm.
Al-Anon the way you're supposed to. I don't do DBT the way you're supposed to. I don't do the work the way you're supposed to, because I've realized that like all of it is some little person who was confused and trying to
Mm-hmm.
comfort themselves came up with some set of something, or they were
Mm-hmm.
confused and scared. And so they tried to control a group of people to comfort themselves. So,
Yeah.
whoever's rules are there, the rules are only there because they were scared.
Yep.
So I don't have to join them in that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, and I love that. And I think it's like you said, it's almost like a radical perspective. But if you're somebody that doesn't feel like they fit into something else that
Yeah.
exists, like try that perspective on, see how it feels, like feel into that, explore what might be there for you.
Yeah.
And it could be freeing,
Yeah. Take a little bit of this, a little bit of that, a little bit of this.
Yeah. Okay, so there's one last thing, I
Okay.
swear, before we get into your current offerings. Was I wrote um 4 quotes from your book, and I just wanted to know kind of where you stood on them now, if you still believe them, if you don't believe them, or if there's maybe a lesson that you learned since that's kind of evolved into something
Cool.
else. Um or however I read
Yeah.
it, and just whatever you think or you associate
Cool.
with at this time. Like, 6, I know it's something you wrote a while ago, but the first one: water is water, love is love, and there is always more than enough.
Yes. I
Yeah.
agree.
Okay. That one, I don't know what it was about those words,
Yeah.
but that one
That's
just
really
like
cool.
flattened me. Like, it was just like, wow. There is nothing, no person, no decision or experience that is not offered as a gift to me.
Yeah. 100%.
Hmm.
That's so cool.
And yeah. And for anyone listening, before we pressed record, I was like, oh gosh, I hope I don't screw up the bio, like just kind of like jumping off. And, Z explained like it's all a gift. There's no right and wrong. And just and I was like, I wrote down a quote that goes exactly along with that you said.
I love it. I love knowing that, because like I said at the beginning, when people tell me they read the book, I'm like, I don't know what's in there. Like, I don't know if I agree with it still. So this is so cool. Thank you.
Yes. Third one, which we've kind of touched on, but I love the quote, so I'm going to read it anyways. This perspective that everything, both what we perceive as good and bad, is there for our growth and is very freeing and exciting.
Yeah, it is. Mm-hmm. It is. It's just so much, like, all the pressure is off, you know?
Mm-hmm. And this last one, I think I probably know where you stand now. I don't want to be presumptuous, but I pulled it out because I feel like it's something that every person has felt at some point in their life. And that quote is, I just spend a lot of time feeling invisible.
Yeah, I don't feel that way anymore at all. That's cool to notice. Do you remember what, like, section of the book was I talking about gender stuff with that?
I think it was before. Yes, and I think it was before you had started DBT.
Okay, interesting.
But I think it was related to identity.
Okay, yeah, that's so interesting. So yeah, I do hear people resonate with that, you know, feeling invisible. And I think what's interesting for me now is that my identity is based only in being, you know, obviously I have pockets where I still am like, oh, am I a good parent? Or like, oh, am I a good whatever person? Or but my, like, core value is that my identity is only change. That, like, change is the only thing that I know for sure. And so the invisibility piece is so related to, like, being something in a static moment and being seen as that, or like having it reflected back to you that you are that. So it's super, like, static, it feels like, is the best word. Like, you could only be invisible. I mean, yeah, you could only feel invisible if you were visible, like, if you could snapshot it, right? And so if we can't snapshot it, which is now more where I'm coming from, like, I am just change. I am moving energy, and there's nothing that I need to be seen, because I don't think you could get it. Like, you can't get me in a moment, you know? So again, like, the impossibility of the thing that was causing me pain is the freeing thing for me. I have not verbalized this before, but so I'm not sure how to, but just like how, you know, me being wrong became the gift when I realized there could not be a wrong. It's like the invisibility is a gift when I am no longer visible, meaning that I don't have an identity that needs to be seen. And also, I now feel like I'm just like, you know, this is my whole video game. So, like, literally everything is just me and the universe, like, co-creating and, like, playing. And so, like, everything that I see in my life right now is like synchronicities. So it's like you were in the class the other day when the instructor was like, oh, like, this is not how you do the work. And it was like, I was just talking to one of our classmates yesterday about how it was like, oh my gosh, so cool. Like, it was like this, like, unfoldment of the video game being like, we know you still have a little bit of insecurity here. We know you still have a little bit of, like, touching in with right, wrong here. We know that this would be the perfect word. And, like, all of it was, like, super orchestrated to, like, take me to another level of liberation. And I was like, so touched and blown away by the thoughtfulness, because the way that the person who said the thing to me, like the word that she used paired with the moment, and then the like follow up that happened, and like when I found because I went back to the work and like dove
Yes.
back into it and like ended up finding like the exact statement that was the wrong statement, like being used by Katie, like it was like just phantasmic, the way that it was so perfectly orchestrated to be exactly what would be most beneficial for my growth. So I feel the opposite of invisible now. Like the whole place is just like twisting itself into like exactly what I need. Just extraordinary.
It is. And on that, when that moment happened in class, and I was watching the exchange, I felt like I don't know that I could have responded in the open way that you did. And one of the things that I absolutely loved that you did, that I've reflected on several times since the class, was, and this is, my interpretation as I was watching it, I felt like a little bit of the tone of the instructor almost felt a little bit aggressive or kind of pointed. Um, and just the way that I was receiving the interaction, again, I don't know the intention behind it and all of that. I felt like I was like, man, this doesn't really feel like it's coming from a great place. And I felt a little bit, I don't know, like she was almost pushing you to tell something that you weren't quite comfortable talking about. And in that moment, you said, what feels right for me is I'm going to go back and reflect on this a bit. And um, that ability to be in a situation where there is almost a power dynamic, right? The instructor, the student, and they're challenging you as you're asking a question. There's a million different ways that you can respond that are not near as graceful as the way that you did. And I don't know that I could have lived into what you were able to do. So that was amazing to see. But seeing somebody that has gone through the struggles that you've gone through, where you have felt like you're invisible, where you felt like you needed other people's permission, where you felt like my interpretation reading your book was so much of what you felt was that you wanted this acceptance from other people, and how you felt about yourself was almost interwoven with how they felt about you. And this challenging moment to just be able to stand in your truth and say, well, what is right and comfortable for me right now is extraordinary to witness. And like I said, I don't know that I could have embodied what you were able to do in that moment. And it was just spectacular, really.
Thank
So
you.
evolved and just beautiful. And
Thank you. I can't tell you how much I appreciate that reflection. And I think there was a part of me that also experienced it from the observers and was absolutely ecstatic to see my own capacity to align with my values in that moment, because that is the experience that I most desire to have, is to be able to act in alignment with my values. That's a big piece of DBT. And because of, our blessed nervous system and what we're thinking and believing, we're many times not able to access that. And that's reasonable. That makes a lot of sense. It makes perfect sense that you wouldn't have that same reaction, because you're thinking and believing and experiencing things differently from me. And to be able to my biggest primary fear was I'm a problem and I'm wrong. And to be wrong from the other person's perspective, she actually used the word problematic, which was the like, who uses that word, like it was so cool. It was so like, I call them God winks, because it was just like, you are problematic and you better go against your values and feel submissive, and it was like, this is like the most thoughtful gift ever. Like, wow, like to put that into her vocabulary, you know, who knows what the little teams all had to line up for 20 years ago, you know, who knows, and to have it hit her the way it did so that she was in that
Yes.
little bit of a like, you know, it was like, oh, it makes me like shiver right now just even thinking about it, because it's like, oh, that was the perfect little like, do you actually believe you're innocent?
Mm-hmm.
Because here I am saying that that's what I think, you know? And it was this just extraordinary moment to witness
Mm-hmm.
me aligning with that, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and to leave it and go, okay, I'm going to think about this. And okay, let me go back through the work. Let me go back through my session. Let me look at what is left here for me to learn, you know, and then to be able to be like, genuinely, thank you, that was
Mm-hmm.
perfect. You know, I was able to go back to the instructor and be like, thank you, these are my 3 biggies and you just served them up on a platter, and I'm
Yeah.
so just overwhelmed with the
Mm-hmm.
thoughtfulness. Yeah, incredible.
Yeah, it was just like an ultimate lesson in being reflective versus reactive. And that is something that I aspire to. And I try to live into that. Like I said, I know that I don't nail it every time.
Neither do
And,
I.
but just, but just watching in that moment, you absolutely did nail it in that moment. And I was like, this is just extraordinary. And yeah, it was beautiful to see.
It was a huge blessing.
So I want to, before we wrap things up, kind of switch gears. So you've got some courses on offering. Um, I will first say the website is earthschool.me, and that will be in the show notes. So anybody could just click on that directly from the podcast show notes, or if you go to the website, it'll be on there as well. But you've got a free mini course, Ditch One Word to Improve Your Life Now, and that's a free download. And then you've got Essential Self Reset, a 28-day reset with journal, meditations, nervous system exercises. And then you've got an upcoming program, Be the Change. And that's a 12-week journey to release victim consciousness, embrace unconditional peace, and resource yourself to contribute. And that starts in January. So just, I guess, the free mini course would be kind of like an introduction to how you how you do your work, how you,
Yeah.
coach, that sort of thing. And again, that one is free, so definitely check that out. And the Essential Self Reset, is this a self-guided 28-day reset? Like you
Yep.
provide the curriculum and they go through it?
Yep. There's a journal with daily prompts for the 28 days. And then there's 4 sets of videos around 4 topics of radical acceptance, nervous system regulation, um, creative inspiration, and spiritual guidance. So that is an awesome. Oh, and there's also meditations for each week.
Okay.
So that is an awesome, like, just capture the magic, you know, just
Mm-hmm.
get a overview. It's not super deep. You could do it, you know, if you really wanted to, you could probably do it in one weekend. I love spreading it out over a month and just sort of like a check in with yourself. In our training, we talk about essential self versus social self. So the social self is the one who follows the rules and wants to be
Mm-hmm.
liked, and, you know, doesn't have as much access to their own inspired action because they're trying to follow all these rules and expectations. And the essential self is the one that can really access that inspired, meaningful contribution. So that's just more of an introduction,
Okay.
and it's all asynchronous. So it's all available for immediate download,
Perfect.
and is very accessible cost wise. That's the main reason why I made it, because I just wanted something that someone could grab and not have to have a huge investment of time or money.
Mm-hmm.
And then the Be the Change, I'm so excited about. It'll start in January, and it's going to be very deep dive. We'll have
Mm-hmm.
12 live sessions once a week together to explore the work of Byron Katie, and some Q&A on each weekly topic. And the topics range all the way from, distress tolerance, just very basic DBT stuff, and then go all the way, end up looking at identity shifting and living as a co-creator with the universe. So some of the universal laws, and my experience with, and thoughts about them. So it's a
Mm-hmm.
pretty big learning arc, and I think it'll be really fun to do together. And then the
Mm-hmm.
SSP, which is a nervous system listening program, people have the option with the Be the Change course to add on some group SSP that's going to be more financially accessible, because the individual SSP is a really big financial investment.
Okay. Perfect. And if they wanted to sign up for Be the Change, do you have like a closing date for that and like the date when the program does start?
Yeah, it starts that first week. Let me pull it up. In January, the live sessions are going to be on Sundays at 5 p.m. Eastern time. So whenever that,
Okay.
I don't know, whenever that first Sunday is. And then there is an application for it. So it's not just a sign up.
Okay.
So if folks can fill out the application, sooner rather than later, then it'll give me time to
Mm-hmm.
go through it. I want to make sure that it's a good fit for people.
Okay.
I think that first Sunday is the 7th. Yep, the
Perfect.
7th
Okay.
at 5 p.m. Eastern time. And that'll be recorded. So all the rest of it's asynchronous, and
Mm-hmm.
people can access it in any order. And it's, again, got videos and meditations,
Mm-hmm.
and journaling prompts. So what was I saying? Oh, you were asking, when is there a deadline? There's no deadline. Just fill out that application, and then I'll follow up with you if I have questions. And there's a separate questionnaire for folks who are interested in the SSP, because that is more of a physiological intervention, and there are some precautions and contraindications.
Okay, perfect. And I will put the links to those offerings in the show notes as well. So you can just hit the show notes and kind of click on anything that you might be interested in. And then for your coaching programs, so you offer the individual SSP that you mentioned, group SSP, and then nervous system education and coaching. And that's a package. Could you just walk us through those offerings and what those look like?
Yep. So SSP is a little too long to go into today. You can get more information about it on my website. It's a listening program that is a passive nervous system treatment, and it increases flexibility, increases social engagement, and decreases auditory sensitivities and some of the other sensory sensitivities. It's a pretty
Mm-hmm.
phenomenal tool, and I use that in conjunction with my coaching tools to support people in, again, accessing their essential self and shifting from being a victim and moving towards being a contributor, a creator.
Mm-hmm.
And I use the work of Byron Katie in those sessions. I use several other of our coaching tools to get people to build a trusting relationship with their body, with their nervous system, and then be able to have the capacity to shift back up into that executive functioning and look at some of those thoughts and beliefs that are creating suffering.
Mm-hmm.
So the SSB is its own whole thing. And then the nervous system education package is for those folks who, for whatever reason, can't access the SSP. It could be because of a contraindication, or it could be because of financial resources, or they just don't want to look at the time investment. The SSP takes about 6 months. And
Mm-hmm.
it's 4 sessions, and we'll just really go through and get to know you, your individual nervous system, your relationship with your nervous system, and then your relationship with your thoughts and beliefs, and just sort of get you that set of information. Because when we come just from the spiritual perspective, just like we talked about the DBT,
Mm-hmm.
it can be very difficult to work with this animal body, right? Because
Yep.
when that amygdala is closed and we don't have access to our executive functioning, it's near impossible to change things just from a spiritual perspective. But when we really understand that we're a person with a history, and that history is embedded in our DNA, and we need to figure out how to work with and build a trusting relationship with this wonderful navigation system, which is our nervous system, it opens up possibilities to be able to support ourselves in shifting out of that, lower brain and back up to the frontal lobe, so that we can actually have some tools and resources to
Yeah.
navigate the spiritual perspective. Yeah.
Awesome. Again, I'll put those links in the show notes as well. And as somebody that has gotten to go through coach training with Z, they are a super powerful coach, and I could not recommend
Yeah.
checking out their services more. It's just, you're amazing.
Thank you.
And then, so you've got a podcast coming out, Earth School.
Yes.
And I saw that the trailer is available on Spotify now. Could you tell us a little bit about the podcast and when the first episode is going to come out? And
yes.
Yeah.
So again, taken from Byron Katie. Someday I will leave my life's everything to her. So she talks about this being Earth School, right? And I played around a little bit with, like, I do believe that we are creators, and that this is an experience, and that we are, that it is a very playful experience. But I also deeply understand that most of us go through periods of suffering when we are confused. And so I wanted to capture sort of that. Being on Earth is challenging, but it can also be incredibly rewarding and exciting and inspiring. Many of us have had sort of negative associations with school, but if you think about education and what it offers people sociologically, it's a powerful thing. And most of us are excited by learning that we actually authentically connect with. And so being able to frame our experiences here as like a curriculum, and seeing, like I was able to see in that moment in class, like, wow, like this curriculum is like so tailored to me and like so cool. And I have the most loving teachers. It just is an opportunity. And I want to share with others through people's stories how they've been able to move sort of through that victimhood phase and emerge into the perspective of growth and learning, and how, whether you actually believe it or can, prove it to be true, when people look at life as, what can I learn from this experience, they often have better experiences with health, including mental health. And so just at the bottom line, even if just to make this ride, however short or long it ends up being, a little bit less stressful and taxing, we can, offer ourselves this perspective of, what can I learn? This happened. Now what can I learn? So that's what the podcast is going to be about. And I can't wait to like share people's stories like yours, because I learn best through stories, and I know a lot of people do. So
yes, and I am super excited to be a guest on the podcast. And once we have that date sorted out, I will let the community know for sure. Because yeah, I just, like I said, I could talk to you all day, and
me
I need to be
too.
respectful of your time.
This has been so fun.
It has been. Yeah, I definitely still have a million more things that I want to know. Maybe you can come on another time, and then, or we can continue it on your podcast as well.
Yeah.
Because
let's do a part 2.
Yes, definitely.
That'd be so fun. Because when you come on Earth School, I want to just hear all about you and your journey.
Okay.
But also, I wanted to say, I also have started a YouTube channel, and I'm having a lot of fun with it because it's a little bit more free flowing and less prescribed than like some of the courses and stuff. And it goes everywhere from nervous system regulation exercises to like, is this a video game? So people can check that out too.
And your YouTube handle, is it at Be The Change 88? Do I have that right?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. And I will drop that link as well.
Okay. It's on that website
really
too.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, there's really fantastic content on there. And it's a great way to get to know Z a little bit better. So, if I were to close this, I guess, with one thing, if you could only recommend like one book, one resource, one way of thinking, anything that it is, anything along your healing journey, for somebody that might be struggling, might be going through some pain, some suffering, what is the one thing that you would recommend that was life-changing for you?
That's a really hard question
I
because I
know.
love all of the things. I've really thought about if I had to pick just one sentence, that people remembered when they thought of me, after I pass, I want it to be, we are all absolutely innocent. That's my sort of, that's my mission. That's my main thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say probably the set of information that brought me closest to that is the work of Byron Katie, and specifically her book, I Need Your Love, Is That True? Because like you acknowledged, my first 35 years were all about the dependency on other people's approval and whether they were okay with me or not. And that book, I Need Your Love, Is It True? Really just challenges that so explicitly. And then DBT is like oxygen.
Yes. I can't wait. I'm actually going to order that workbook and kind of dive into
Let's
that.
talk because I might recommend one other one too.
Okay, perfect. So yeah, thank you so much
so
much for taking the time to chat with me. This has been absolutely amazing. And I appreciate the opportunity to get to talk to you and learn from you. And for anyone listening, please check out Z, their podcast and offerings. Z, you're an absolute light in this world, and I truly feel fortunate that our paths have crossed.
Right back at you. Thanks you so much for doing this podcast. It really is, like I said before we started recording, I'm so grateful for the way that you weave the practical in with the spiritual. It's so important to me too, and I'm so grateful for what you're offering. So thank you for allowing me to be a part of your story as well.
Yes, thank you so much. That's it for today's episode, my friends. Thanks so much for joining me on the Live Your Truth, Love Your Life podcast. To get even more out of today's conversation, don't forget to swing by the show notes and download your freebie. Want to keep the conversation going? I'd love to hear what spoke to you most today. Head on over to my Instagram at Live Your Truth, Love Your Life and drop me a comment. I'm always excited to connect and learn more about you. Remember, the journey towards living your truth and loving your life is a rewarding one. New episodes are dropping each Monday and Thursday, and I can't wait for next time. Until then, have a fantastic week.